Thank you. Thank you. Tanse, tatamskatano kakio. I'm grateful to be with you all today. I'm here to bring a message of hope, resilience, working together, thriving together, and doing the best we can with what's in front of us. As a kid, I was always told, work with what you have. Whatever's in front of you, don't compare yourself to other people. Just because someone has something more than you doesn't mean that you can't work for that. Some of the things I'm going to share with you today, ladies and gentlemen, come from before my time. They come from my ancestors, been passed down from generation to generation. And I'm going to share them with you in teachings. That's how it's translated in our language, these lessons that have been passed down, because there's no textbooks in our cultural path. You have to be there in person, listening to an elder, sitting there, speaking to young people. And as children, we used to bow our heads and give our ears, our attention to whoever was speaking. So unknowingly, we grew up very quiet. They knew the power of words. And these power of words were only emphasized when a teaching moment was needed. Historically, indigenous peoples had a sign language. They would only speak if they absolutely had to historically. So I want to share some of these teachings today to try help all of us to move forward. Because my goal today, ladies and gentlemen, is as we leave these doors, that we go back to our municipalities as leaders, leading the way for the future, working together, thriving together. But in order for that to happen, where we are trying to get to, we have to work on this. Everyone has this, a mindset. In order for things to change, this has to change. We have to grow up here. We have to learn things. We have to meet people. We have to get used to sitting side by side as friends, as allies, with every single person in every background in this country. I often get asked, Kendall, come and help us. We want to know about indigenous peoples. We want to know how to work with you. We have a reserve right beside our city, our town. We don't know how to talk to each other. So oftentimes, I'm very blunt where I go. And I try to say, well, have you actually gone to visit each other, have coffee, take proper protocol to approach an elder to ask them to come speak to your group, speak to your city? I'll give you one teaching while I'm up here to touch on this area. Anytime you're going to approach an indigenous person for guidance, you want to bring him in to do a presentation, always, always, always start with tobacco. You give that tobacco because that's how it's respected in our culture and our reserves all across this country. Tobacco, you give that, along with a gift, something to compensate them for their time. It's in all of our ceremonies and all the things that we do. We do that to honor and the way that we are taught, which is totally different from when I come out here in the mainstream. I had to learn to live in two different worlds and adapt accordingly to this world and the other world. Because when I go back to this world, my home fire, my bubble on my reserve of sweetgrass, I don't speak like this. I don't talk like this. In fact, I barely speak because the elders have the floor. Here it's humility. Humble, you have to bring yourself down to earth. When I come into the mainstream, it's about marketing. We're trying to grow, we're trying to do things to increase our sales, our marketing, trying to hire people, retain people. It's a different way of looking at things. So in order for us to bridge the gaps with the people that we serve, we better make sure we understand each other. I want you thinking about the best friendships you've had in your lifetime. Who were they? Who are they? There's a good chance that you know certain things about them that no one else knows. There's a good chance that you've taken the time to listen to them, to sit and have coffee together, to sit and laugh, feel all different types of emotions. That's the secret to moving forward together in the future. But in order for that to happen, we have to put old stereotypes in the past, leave them there. The future is inclusive. In order for us to get there, we have to get used to working and sitting side by side. Where does this start? They often ask me, Kendall, where does this start? How do I do this? Well, it's as simple as this. Many of us in this room are parents. Some of you are blessed to be grandparents or great-grandparents. And you are leaving a legacy to your children. The legacy to your children are the teaching moments that you're teaching them. How to interact, enter a room, shake people's hands, look them in the eye, and so on and so forth. You're leaving them with tools to better this world in whatever path they've been chosen to lead. Now, in order for things to continue to get better, we have to ask ourselves and look within ourselves and ask, are the things that I've learned in the past helping me to get to where I want to get to in the future? Sometimes we have to leave negativity in the past. Sometimes we are told things about this world that we have to leave in the past because the future doesn't operate that way. We all know people, you all know who I'm talking about. Sometimes they're close relatives, sometimes they're friends, sometimes they're coworkers. I've had a chance to work with a lot of people, world-class entrepreneurs, world-class speakers, world-class CEOs. There's one thing in common. In order to get somewhere, in order to achieve a certain different level that you're trying to achieve, you have to change and you have to learn accordingly. You have to leave negativity in the past. You have to forgive. You have to work on yourself. You have to be willing to meet people, put yourself out there outside your comfort zone. I was working with a client here in Alberta last year, and they asked me a question. Kendall, I'm right beside a reserve. How can I work with them? I said, did you ever go talk to them? No, I've been emailing, I've been calling. No one's getting back to me. It doesn't work that way with us. We're relationship-focused individuals, sitting, talking together, like how it used to be, pre-technology days. Our elders, our leaders are very much like that still. So I forced them to go and visit this reserve in central Alberta. And you will not believe the conversations that took place following that meeting. It went from being scared to going to the community, talking to people, not just one, but all over the place. They're now supplying the fuel at that reserve. They're one of their main suppliers now, built on going there and talking as friends. They're hiring people, selling stuff in their shop from entrepreneurs from that community, just by going there one afternoon. So my question to you, what are the things that we're doing individually, not as a group, but individually? What are the things that we are doing to help us to get better? We should always be continually striving to grow, to keep moving forward. We have a tough job in this room. Many of us are elected officials. We're elected, we've been chosen to serve, chosen to help. And it's going to be some tough days. You're going to go through times where you're going to want to quit. You're going to go through those times when you're doubting every decision that you've made. But every time you go through those dips, there's a blessing there. Every time there's a challenge, there's an opportunity. It just so happens that as society, we've conditioned ourselves to dwell in the challenges, dwell in the problems, only to realize that it was setting us up for something to get stronger from, to grow into for the future. You look back in all of our lives, I give you a chance right now to think about one of the greatest challenges you had to overcome as an individual. Think about that right now. I want you to look back on the time frame. What was it like going through that? And I want you to bring yourself back to the present and be like, I know why I went through that. What was the teaching moment? I'll give you one example, okay? I am a speaker. How I speak today was not how I spoke as a kid, was not how I spoke in university. I went to university to become an educator. That was my focus. I was like, I want to become a phys ed teacher. You know, I played some volleyball. I actually lived in northern Alberta for 2 years. I went to college. I played some volleyball. I came back home and I said, I want to become an educator. I want to help through sport. But I was shy. I was timid. I was scared to be square, to speak. I was scared to get up on a stage. First time I ever got asked to speak, there were stairs like that, but they were much higher. I mean, that stage was probably this high. They called me up, I'm jogging up, and I jogged all the way down, falling down. Everyone's laughing. My face is beet red. Could have stopped there. If it would have stopped there, I wouldn't be here with you today. That's an example of how life works. Not just on our individual path, but also collectively in the municipalities that we serve. I want you thinking about your path throughout the days leading up to you going back home to your home fire. I want you to think about every decision that you made, all the wins, all the things you had to learn from that made you to get better to who you are here in this room. You're chosen. And I want you to get used to saying that in your head. I'm chosen to lead. I've been put here by the good power to lead my people. It's a powerful statement when you truly believe in that. When you're chosen to lead, there's also a great responsibility that you're going to have to hold yourself to a higher standard. You have to watch how you conduct yourself in rooms like this, outside of the rooms like this, online, social media, behind the scenes. You have to watch the conversation. I want to give you a piece of advice. Always imagine there's someone recording everything that you're speaking about, like my guy right here who's taking a photo of me. Imagine he's following me every step of the way, every conversation. What would your conversations be like if you had to be truthful and meaningful and polite all the time? It's going to do something to your energy and your mindset. And the people that come into your life are going to feel that. I'll give you one example. So, in this world I talked about, very much different from how I'm speaking here right now with you in this other world, the mainstream I call it. Where I come from, I didn't know I was being conditioned to be a sponge most of my life. So by being in a lineup, like when we came in today, or waiting on the airplanes coming to travel, I listen to all the conversations all the time, and I'm learning all the time, continually being a knowledge seeker. Because you don't know if the person you're sitting beside is going to help solve something you're working on in the back of your mind. But if we act like we know it all, we're going to miss those teachings in our life. We're going to miss those people that will come into our life and that are blessed to be there, but our mind isn't there to understand and recognize that. I'm the oldest in my family. I have 3 younger sisters. And if you were to look at all the different things that happen, some of you have read my book, Driven to Succeed. Some of you I've spoken for before. I've talked about the journey more in detail in different keynotes. And as I've spoken to that, I've made it very clear that I probably shouldn't statistically be here with you up here on this stage. My ancestors went through a lot of stuff. We're starting to understand that in the last 2.5 years, especially with the uncoverings of those graves. We're now over 10,000 bodies found. That's a hard fact to look at. These are stuff that happened in our country. We can't walk around acting like we're perfect when things happen in their past, but that doesn't mean we can't be in a position to correct it for the future with the decisions that we make. My mother did the best she could with what she had. In our municipalities, you do the best with what you have right in front of you. My mom single-parented us, took us out of an abusive home. And that meant she had to sacrifice for us. She was the leader in our family. She had to sacrifice, taking us out of that environment. If we peel back the layers on this, I'll give you a bird's eye view into our world. My mother's mom hid from the residential school system by hiding in the bushes. My mother's dad went to the residential school, passed away before he was 50, had a lot of things that didn't go right for him. I don't know his story. But here's what I know. Individuals, what they're taught when they're children really impacts who they become as they become adults. No one chooses to live on the street. No one chooses addictions. They get conditioned to accept that. And that becomes their identity. And they live that. So my mom was blessed to have two parents. Go back a different generation. My great-grandfather, my great-grandmother, they had the rebellion here in North Battleford area. And a lot of the leaders got hung at Fort Battleford. My great-grandfather, during this time, he had to flee. His mother and father had to flee to the U.S. And little by little, they kept coming back to try to retain the culture, the language, the ceremonies, the teaching moments. My mother and my father both had a very troubled background. They had to try heal. Both came from intergenerational trauma. So when my dad was, I would say, leading a very unhealthy life, my mom had to make a decision. She had to separate. With that meant that we're going to have no more dad in our house. A really important figure. If you're lucky to have two parents, that's a true blessing. So I want you to put yourself in other people's shoes now, because it's important to do that when you're in a leader position. You have to understand that how you're raised is not going to be the same as someone else. If someone's struggling, there's a reason they're struggling. If a town, a city is struggling, there's a reason and root of where that stems from. And we have to confront the root in order to plant new seeds, in order to work onto what's next and what's possible for all of us. But we can't walk around and act like things are perfect. When we have these things, we have to correct. It's the same thing as us in this room. You've been chosen to lead. There's a good chance as you're chosen to lead, you've had to overcome some great obstacles in your life. These obstacles paved the path for you to be here. You've had to do things that are very uncomfortable. You had to go and shake hands, get up and do speeches. Maybe that's uncomfortable for you. You've had to put lots of miles on the road, talking to people, networking. All this is part of your foundation. And if there's cracks in the foundation, you can only go so high before it crumbles. You look at any building that's structurally sound out there, they're always looking at that foundation. Same thing as you and I. We can only go as far as our foundation allows us to. And adding layers upon layers is the things that we learn, what we can control going into our mind, the people that we come in contact with. It's important that we're always doing our best to work and listen with positive, like-minded people. People that nurture our mind, our spirit, our body. And then there's people who come into our path. Sometimes we have no choice but to come in contact with them. People who are very negative. People that don't want the best for you. Maybe they're keyboard warriors behind the scenes. I don't know. We all know people like that. But there's people that will come and try to take you off that path. But we can learn from that. We can grow from that. They used to say, growing up in this world, they used to say, Kendall, I want you to imagine your life down this long road. You're starting at the beginning of this line. At this line is when you've been put here. You were born. Every step you take is time on your lifeline. As you're walking down that path, it's not going to be straight and clear. You're going to have obstacles. People will come into your life that will test you, that will challenge you. You'll have people in your life that will come to help you, give you aid, give you encouragement, pray for you, give you blessings in disguise of problems sometimes. And as you're taking steps, there will be things that will happen to us as a society. Blessings. Problems. We went through it through the pandemic. We were shaken up. But that doesn't mean that there might not be future opportunities that we can learn from. We learned how to work virtually together. We learned how to value the communication skills that are most valuable to us. Sitting behind the screen wasn't fun. Getting in a room like this, talking to your buddies, your friends, that's what matters. Making time for your children, your loved ones. Other things they used to say to me is, Kendall, you got to make sure that part of your foundation If you want to be successful, it starts at home. I used to wonder what that meant. I was like, what do you mean it starts at home? Well, if you have children, that's your duty at home. If you have a spouse, that's your duty at home. You do everything you can to protect that bubble. When you're happy at home, when it's all flowing at home, when you go out there and you're serving your communities, you tend to be more happier doing that. When you're having a challenge at home, you carry that into your workplace unknowingly through the energy, through your communication. So we must always make time for where it matters most. It's part of our foundation. Who we live with, who we associate with. And I always encourage people to ask themselves this question. Anytime you come in contact with someone new that wants to be a part of your inner circle, anytime you get an opportunity, an email, a phone call, ask yourself this one question. I would write this down and put it on your notebook and keep it in front of your desk on your phone. Is what's being presented to me right now going to help me to get to my goals? Yes or no? Is who I'm coming in contact going to help me get to my goals? Yes or no? If it's going to take away, it's an easy answer for you. If it's going to take away from your family, it's an easy answer to say no. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to not be a people pleaser. When I was in grade 6, my mom took us from that home. And she made a decision as a leader that she was going to put us in a different environment. So off we went to a northern city in Saskatchewan called Prince Albert. We were living in a northern reserve there. I didn't see Dad a whole lot. But I still love my dad. Still really do. I still to this day. But there was a lot of problems that he hadn't dealt with at that time, even to this day. And it was starting to affect the household. So one day, a pickup truck pulled up in front of our home where we lived out there. And my mom was putting all these garbage bags, these boxes in the back of this pickup truck. And I'm wondering as a kid, what's happening? I get to the house and Mom says, hey, Kendall, go inside, pack up your bag. We're going to go somewhere. Be quick, hurry up, be quick. I could see Kendra, Farah, Marisha getting into the back seat. Now I'm getting curious. I'm like, what's happening? I get my little Ninja Turtles backpack, everyone's favorite 90s show back then. My toys I put in the back of the pickup truck, and off we went to Prince Albert, which was the gateway to the north. You'll notice many Indigenous peoples, they have different cities. Edmonton is one of them. It's a gateway for many Indigenous people to come and get their medical supplies, their doctor appointments, dentists, and so on. They come and get their supplies and they go back to their community. Prince Albert's very much the same way. Saskatoon's the same way, where I currently reside. And we went to Prince Albert and we checked ourselves into this shelter, this women's shelter, these interval houses, which we became our home part-time, because we had no place to go. Eventually, my grandmother, my kukam, as we'd say in Cree, nukam, she was the one to take us to her home in Sweetgrass First Nation, not far from Cutknife, Saskatchewan. She lived on top of this hill. And I remember the first day we put all of our belongings in the back of our living room, and we put all the stuff there. And she said, nah, this is where you're going to be sleeping today. So it was just the floor. All made our bed there, and that was our room, the living room. And we stayed there for several months with her. I didn't know she was going to be a teacher to me. I didn't realize she was going to take me to cultural events, being part of ceremony. I was totally unaware at that time in my life. I didn't realize she was going to teach me some of the teachings I'm going to share with you about the power of working together, not holding on to grudges, forgiving each other, doing your best to leave a room in a positive way. And I used to ask as a child, I'd be like, Kukam, how come you always say that? And then finally, after a few times, she finally just stopped what she was doing, and she went up to me and she said, you watch how you talk to people, because you don't know if that's going to be the last time you see that person. You don't want to carry any guilt. The words that we use can literally save people's lives and encourage them to see another day. Encourage them to go after a dream. Encourage them to work hard in our municipalities, to keep growing the corporate ladders in our organizations. The power of words, and it has to come from here. You can't just say it from here. You have to feel those words. So when she would say this to me, I started to think about that. And then there was one teaching about forgiveness. And I didn't realize it would be a superpower for a lot of leaders in the future. I see them use this. Because there will be people that will come into your life that will say mean stuff to you, that will treat you in a very dishonest way, that will do you wrong and hope you do wrong. But we can learn from them. She used to say, if people are being mean to you, they're doing things to purposely throw you off your path, distance yourself from them. And if anything, pray for them, she would say. Forgive them, because they don't know any better. They weren't told things. And now they're lost. And they see you because it triggers their own realization that they haven't lived up to their expectations, to where they can be in their life. That's the part of being a leader. You're going to trigger people sometimes because of how far you're going. And how far you're going is proof because you've built your foundation. That's a blessing right there. Being able to work through your challenges, your issues, the things behind the scene, the work before the work, all the stuff behind the scenes, it gets shown in physical form later. I want to share with you a story here before we wrap up today and we depart. I wanted to come up here today, ladies and gentlemen, to bring some words of encouragement, to bring real life stories that will help all of us here today to try to move forward in a good way. I really believe that where we want to go requires us to actively invest in up here. In the form of, could be books, it could be listening to speakers, it could be listening to audio programs, it could be going to conferences, listening to people in your community, and continually being a knowledge seeker. Then applying what you've learned into your day-to-day life. I came into entrepreneurship because I got inspired from a young age. A lot of the helping hands that came as a kid came from people who were non-Indigenous, that saw me as a human being, saw me as a kid with potential. I lived side by side with a town. Right in that town, a lot of farmers. Around the town were 3 different reserves. Right beside my other side of the reserve is a little city. Around the city, 6 different reserves. And I got to see from a young age a divide, this imaginary wall that was constructed in people's minds. You people over here, you people over here. We don't talk to each other. Leave us alone. I used to see this as a kid. Here I am now in the future. I'm trying to break that wall down. I'm trying to build a bridge up here. Trying to build a bridge so we can work together. But it takes individual, collective effort to do that. It starts at your children's sports practices. There's going to be people from different backgrounds, maybe Indigenous backgrounds, maybe from different countries. Have you taken the time to go and talk to them? Because when we walk into a room, here's how we feel. It's very uncomfortable for us. Walking into a grocery store, the dentist office, clinic, hospital, our favorite store, Walmart, for some reason. It can get uncomfortable for us. But can you imagine if we all became friends and how much more work we can get done? It starts at those little things like a convenience store. The children that are part of your children's life, where they go to school and so on. That's where it starts. But in order for those opportunities to be taken advantage of, we have to be able to leave a legacy for the children that we serve, our grandkids and so on. We have to make sure we're giving them the tools to be able to go and network, to talk to each other without any judgment, and to learn and pave the way for a brighter future as we leave those doors here today. My goal is that I hope that my kids, if I'm blessed to have grandkids, that the future of work, our municipalities, as we're building businesses together, building nonprofits together, living in unison and harmony. But in order for us to get there, we have to understand each other as friends, as allies. I have a gift for you. If you want to listen to the story that I've shared, it's free. It's ebook and audiobook format. You can scan that code. It's for everyone in this audience here today, because I don't got time to get into detail with all this stuff. I only got about 10 more minutes up here with you. So I wanted to share some of these stories. Now, in order for me to illustrate and bring this home for everyone, I want to share with you a very personal story that really impacted my future, which it's part of my future with you right now. I had a kid who became my childhood best friend from South Africa. Him and his family came as immigrants to Canada. His dad was a doctor at the local clinic in Cutknife, Saskatchewan. There's about 500 people in that town at that time. And this around there was Sweetgrass, Palmaker, Little Pine, First Nations. And sometimes some of the kids would have to get bused to the town. And I was one day getting bused to town. Grade 3. I was very uncomfortable walking into that room because I didn't realize I spoke about different things. I had an accent, I talked about different things, no one knew who my cookum was, all these different things. And finally, I noticed there was a commonality. The commonality was sport. I liked to play soccer, these kids played soccer, we met on the soccer field. When we were on the soccer field, something beautiful took place. After about 3-4 days, I'd be on the field just walking around because I was too scared to go play with them. I'd be at recess, at lunch, listening, putting my head down, going back to my childhood programming of being a sponge. And I'd listen to all these conversations at recess during the spare time. And I'd realize, a lot of these kids come from farms. They come from farming background. And I was starting to listen to these conversations of what they talked about. And I remember one day I just wanted to go play, so I started cutting myself in to play soccer. I said, "Hey guys, how's it going? How much rain you get last night? How are the crops doing?" A lot of crops, right? I didn't know what I was talking about. But these kids talked about these different things. I didn't even know what a crop was. I didn't know what cultivating was, combining. Still don't, actually. But I took the time to understand what they were interested in. And you know what happened? I started to play with them. During that time together, they said, "Hey, Kendall, where are you from?" I'd say, "I'm from Sweetgrass." "Where's that from?" "It's about 10-15 minutes away." "Oh, right, I think I passed through there to North Balfour." I was like, "That's right, that's where I live." And I started opening up to them, telling them about my life, where I came from. I only have mom in the household. We're living on social assistance because there's no jobs back home. Very few people have transportation. A lot of people are living on social assistance. There's no ec-dev back home. There's no entrepreneurship at that time. We're living, unfortunately, off of a dependency of social assistance, many of us. Very hopeless environment. I can go back and show you where that comes from. Read a book, 21 Things You May Not Know About the Indian Act and how that's impacted Indigenous people to this day. Some of these rules are still in place today that stop us from being independent as nations. And these are things that we're still overcoming to this day. Like we couldn't become educated. We couldn't even leave our reserves. So when I'm up here, I'm honoring as best I can what I hope that they would have wanted me to share up here. But there was a kid named Johan. Him and his family really impacted me. Johan one day said, Kendall, why aren't you playing soccer with us after school? And I had to tell Johan, I said, you know what, Johan, I was embarrassed. I don't even have a vehicle. I don't have $50 to pay this fee. My only ride is that bus back and forth to my reserve that drops me off every day. We're living on social assistance. We collect cans and bottles. We pawn our belongings just so I can come to school. I was really ashamed to talk about this stuff when I was a kid, because as a kid, you just want to be accepted by people. It's very much true in our adult lives, but in a different form. We want to do good work and be accepted by people. We need that validation from people to help us to step into another level. So Johan and his family saw a kid in need. They saw a human being. Johan told his parents what I told him. The next day, Johan and his family paid for my soccer fees. They started driving me to my reserve out of their way, really empowering me. They said, Kendall, come to our house on the weekend. So I remember going to these kids' houses. It wasn't just Johan's house, but a few other kids from different farms would ask me to go and visit. And when I'd go there, I'd be like, oh my gosh, you have your own room, you guys have, all these meals every day. I was like, man, this is nice. Some people had beautiful homes, and I'd be like, wow, maybe one day I could have this for myself. So my mind's expanding. Where we want to get to, our mind has to expand and grow. Because when it expands, it doesn't go back. It wants more of that expansion. We're meant to grow. We're meant to move. We have to push ourselves. On the weekends, I'd be at Johan's house. His dad became a role model to me, Johan Sr. Two Johans, a little confusing some days. And Johan Sr. used to say, hey, Kendall, good job today, young man. Hey, Kendall, I like the way you're dressed today, young man. Hey, Kendall, great job. Uplifting me with words. 2 years later, Johan and his family had to move away. Before they moved away, they gifted my mom a set of car keys, a vehicle they weren't taking to the city. Now my mom is driving me to play sport. And it compounded to going eventually to finish high school, going to college in Northern Alberta, going back and completing 2 degrees, starting my company in Ichigo out of a 1-bedroom apartment, meeting my wife as a full-time student, now sharing 2 children together, both coming from intergenerational trauma, trying to heal together and work together in unison so our children don't have to carry that burden. The leaders are the ones who take on the most. That's why it's important that you're always helping yourself, checking if you're okay up here. It's okay to not be okay, but you have to communicate that with your loved ones and continually work on yourself. I always tell people everyone should have someone that's in the form of a counselor, someone that you can talk to. Because we're losing our ability to communicate effectively with our smartphones taking over our communication systems. We don't do this to check on one another enough. We don't sit in the same room talking to each other enough. And our children's are going to be impacted even more. That's why I believe there's even greater mental health crisis right now. When you speak your problems, when you speak your feelings, you are evaporating what's holding you down. And a lot of our kids nowadays are just doing this. You've lost this. We have to let it out in a healthy form. When me and my wife met in university, I didn't realize that I was going to start a business in that apartment. Had this idea to create a brand that would help kids the way that Johan and his family helped me. I said, I want to help my people one day. That was my goal. I didn't know how to start. When you don't know how to do something, you go find someone that knows it and you learn from them. You go find someone that you can learn from, you take notes, you value their time. So I used to sit in empty classrooms and I would practice a business pitch. Getting up on a stage. I used to go to workshops in the evenings on the weekends in the business college, and I would learn about how to write a business plan. Didn't know what I was doing, but I was able to write a business plan. I was able to learn how to present, and I would force myself to go to these competitions, and we started winning seed money to grow this company from a 1-bedroom apartment. And from that 1-bedroom apartment growing into a kiosk, to a little office, to our own stores. Then we had multiple stores. Then I started to wholesale, do custom orders, distribute. And I started to do stuff online, and people said, Kendall, come and share your story. So I started my life as a keynote speaker. In 2015, I had to dive 2 feet into it. And I said, this is what I'm going to do now. I put all of my energy into it. I had to hire the best coaches in the world. I had to fly places. I had to invest and get into my credit card just to go and learn from the best of the best. Because I knew these investments would pay off in the future. It's uncomfortable in the moment. But if you could see an outcome, that's all you're going to need. Little by little, it compounded, and it brought all of us here today. It's not a coincidence we're sharing this moment. And I hope that today, that the time we've shared, I hope it's been meaningful. Please connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like. I'm here to answer your questions. If there's a question in regards to Indigenous topics that I've discussed today, working together, mindset, please ask me on LinkedIn. I'm an open book. I invite you to connect. I want to leave you with, I would say that one of the most impactful things that I can share with you, always, always, always dedicate yourself to being the person that is the knowledge seeker in your group. That is the sponge. They say knowledge is power. It creates a light around you. It creates the energy, and when you apply it and you use it in certain scenarios, you become very resourceful, very valuable. I know employees that get into jobs and they're so valued that no one wants to fire them. They're so valued that there's no other step for them to climb. So they stay there for a long time. And then someone sees the potential of that leader and may take them away to go and work for them. Leaders always recognize the potential of other leaders. Here's what I want to leave with you. Invest in up here always. The next time you're driving, you're in the airport. What are you doing during that spare time? Quickest way to change an outcome, to change the mindset, you got to watch what goes into your mind, your ears, what you see every day. So monitor your surroundings. Who are you making time for? Ask yourself, does this person want the best for me? Make time for only people who want the best from you, and you will feel it if they want the best for you. In your spare time, I encourage you to invest in audio programs. In 2014, I made a decision to start really heavily investing in what goes on up here. I used to download all these audio programs on my phone. I shut my phone off because one time I left it on the podium, I was speaking, and Siri took over. I was hitting this high note, I was like, yep, do this, do that, do that. And all of a sudden, Siri became possessed and said, yeah, do that. Everyone erupted. I was like, oh my gosh, and I didn't even know what I had to say after that. It just freaked me out. They're listening to us. No, I'm kidding. I don't even know. I'm just kidding. No idea. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been an honor, privilege to be with you today. Keep going, keep growing, keep moving forward. Thank you very much. Hi. Thank you. Thank you.
Handle.